Well,
Travis
hello there.
Campbell, what are you doing?
I'm uh I'm looking for a small refrigerator
Wow.
because my my wife called me and said that our refrigerator busted.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. What are you doing?
Well, I'll tell you what we did when that happened. We beat the system. Here we live near Burbank, California, and in Burbank, there's an
You went to Warner
appliance.
Brothers Studios and you stole a refrigerator.
That's it, man, right off the back of the truck. Well, there's an appliance store that a lot of their business is to the studios, but what they specialize
Mm.
in is the old 50s appliances.
Mm.
Like those Wedgeworth stoves and
Yeah,
the refrigerators
built to
with,
last.
yeah, like the big 3 foot long handle and stuff. So we bought a 70-year-old refrigerator that they had cleaned up and made it look perfect. And we have an old stove to match, and they will outlast anything new you buy right now. And they're cool. They're really cool looking. So there you go.
Well, yeah. Well,
It's the
hey,
advantage of living in LA.
yeah, we got the new one. We got a new one. It's 3 months old and it's under warranty and all, but it broke on us in 3 months.
Yeah.
These new ones, they're real delicate with the stuff and the things. As you can see, I'm very articulate when it comes to mechanical stuff.
Well, it's kind of like newer people. They're pretty fragile, brittle too.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a sign of our times. Well, you know what? I have just to tell our audience, for those of you that don't know, this is Ross and Travis, and we are
What are we,
we have
Travis?
this yeah, we are Ross and Travis, and we have a little show, Notes On. That's what you're watching right now, and Notes On is about doing Christ on purpose, and we are here to just talk about what's on our heart each week. Sometimes in the news, we are getting blocked out a little bit on our screens, but we're still moving strong. And I just had great news over the weekend. I read a great article of one of my heroines. And by heroine, of course, I don't mean the drug, I mean the female hero. And I like honoring women by calling female actors, actresses, and female heroes, heroines. And one of my great heroines for the past 20 years has been Ayan Hirshi Ali. I read her book, Infidel. I watched like a 5 hour conference series where she interacted with multiple of the new atheists. When the new atheism was huge, she was invited to this conference and she expressed why she had become an atheist. She grew up in an abusive home, and she basically attributed it to her Muslim upbringing, not just the parents, that the parents were just imbibing what the religion fed her. And she escaped from her country in Africa, which I believe was Somalia, and she moved to the Netherlands. She actually joined the parliament. She was actually a member of their parliament. And one of her good friends had directed a documentary against Islam, showing that Islam is inherently violent. And the director was killed, and the knife that was used to stab him had her name on it, indicating that she was the next victim. And she, of course, had to get extra security, eventually went into exile into the US. And so back in those days, she was a strong opponent of radical Islam and was even in a 2 hour debate. And I believe it was with Charles Murray, but if I'm not right about that, she was with a liberal commentator who they debated two Muslims, and the question was, is Islam an inherently violent religion? They had a vote afterwards, and they overwhelmingly won. And one of the arguments that was made was, you can't say that this is just a matter of context, these violent verses in the Quran. You can't just say, well, all religions are like that, or they're bad representatives of all religions, because these normative injunctions to engage in violence are actually part and parcel of your holy text. This is not a theologian interpreting a text. This is not someone abusing a statement in a text. This is actually a normative, continual command, as opposed to some of his, as opposed to some of the historically conditioned commands. Can you? I think I got out for a second.
Yeah, you blanked out.
I blanked out. But as opposed to the historically conditioned commands in the Bible, where you have God coming to a specific person or group of people saying, "Go kill these people," that's disturbing, and we have to work through those texts. But those do not constitute normative commands for believers to go and, you know, be violent towards someone because of their religious beliefs. But
Right.
in Surah 9:5 and other texts in the Quran, you have a normative command to go and kill the infidel. Well, as I say, they overwhelmingly won. So she became a strong opponent of religion. She became a strong advocate for atheism. And her basic thesis is that if you uphold a dogma that says, I'm right, you're wrong, that creates exclusivity, that creates tribalism, and that is overall bad for the human race. And so she basically just wrote off all religion as bad.
Right.
Now, a few years ago, I was watching an interview of hers, and it looked like she was beginning to change her tune a little bit. And one of the things she said is, if you are a Muslim and you need that religious belief, which is something I don't, she said, then I have an alternative religion for you. Instead of Islam that doesn't join violence, why not try Christianity?
Wow.
And I was like, this is very curious. You have an atheist, an outspoken atheist, commending Christianity to someone. So it's not like Bill Maher was doing in 2006, where he was like, they're all crazy. There's just degrees of crazy, but all religions are crazy. She actually was able to parse out, look, yeah, Christianity is not true, it's not good, but at least it's better than this. And so that was the song she was singing. I think I saw this interview around 17. I think over the past couple of years, though, and she lets this be known in an essay she just wrote, explaining why she has now become a Christian.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I read it over the weekend, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just so elated and excited about this because this brilliant, beautiful woman who has been through so much has come full circle. And after years and years of just renouncing God, has now come back to question her unbelief. But now she's doing it in a Christian context. And she has apparently been attending a church for a couple of years. And now she's at least ready to say openly to all willing to listen, I am a Christian. I identify myself as a Christian. And she said that what pushed her into atheism was the fact that she read Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian, and it was freeing to her to think, okay, I can just live as I please, unencumbered by these very oppressive rules that have been oppressing me all of my life. I can throw the shackles of that off and live my authentic self. And she says the irony is that when Bertrand Russell delivered that speech, he delivered that speech to a group of fellow atheists, at least those who were willing to question Christianity. And the Philosophical Society that he was delivering that speech to back in the 1920s was very much a minority. The atheists that were there, Bertrand Russell, he was delivering the speech in the context of a Christian society. Mm-hmm. And she said, imagine if Russell had delivered that speech in Saudi Arabia. Imagine if he had delivered that speech in a Muslim-dominated country. We wouldn't know that speech. That speech would have been suppressed. He would probably have been killed, or at the very least, jailed for decades and would have been silenced. And she said, as she was coming full circle, that irony really stuck with her. And then she's been encountering woke ideology, which has no framework, no foundation for truth. What's up is down, what's right is left. I mean, if common sense is going this way, the woke ideology wants to turn around and go the opposite way. And so there's no foundation there. There's no foundation in Islam, precisely because Islam is so oppressive. And she came to the conclusion that there's no foundation for a vibrant, healthy society in atheism, because atheism just literally forces you to give up any objective meaning in life. Where do you find a foundation for our Western values, which have garnered rights for women, for people generally, for the whole idea of due process, the whole idea of a loving God who accepts us as we are, the whole idea of human dignity and that everybody's made in God's image. You can't get any of that stuff. Even if you take God's image out of it, you can't get human dignity in an atheistic mindset. There's no way you can get those values from that.
You don't really find it in any other religions other than Christianity.
That is correct. I mean, the Quran itself says God has made nothing in his image.
Wow. So I noticed that she cited, in the article that I read, she cited Tom Holland's book, Dominion. I've got that book. I've gone through it, and he really makes the case that so many of the values that we hold dear in this culture, even in this post-Christian culture, have their roots in Christianity. And if anybody doubts that, they need to read that book. He doesn't claim to be a Christian, but he's honest with the history, and it's a great book, and it's not a tough read. Yeah.
So I think, when I read her essay, and when I've listened to Tom Holland, I haven't read his book yet, but when I listen to him speak, they really come across as the kind of cultural apologetic. This is the kind of cultural apologetic that you saw in someone like Francis Schaeffer.
Yeah.
This is an updating of the kinds of the criticisms he would give against Western culture back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And he would be blown away if he had lived to see what's going on in our day. And we're not even talking about relativism anymore. Relativism itself at least admits that there is a truth. We're talking about a kind of moralism combined with a nihilism with respect to truth. And it's a weird, contradictory kind of clash that people are holding in their minds that I can't even really begin to wrap my mind around.
Yeah. And
so,
her story is really inspiring. And I think for everybody out there that's been, praying for someone to come to know the Lord, this is how it happens sometimes. She goes from Islam to atheism to Christianity, and keep praying. She probably has had a lot of people praying for her. And we really, really underestimate, what Islam is about. We take this everybody is good attitude that we have in this culture and think, well, they're just oppressed, or they're, all of these excuses. The truth is they hate Christianity, and they hate the Jews, and they are dedicated. They're way better at doing their faith than we are. And they are dedicated to wiping out Christianity and Judaism. You look at this whole conflict between the Israelis and Hamas. Here's a really good example. How much money has been pumped into Gaza and Hamas in the last 2 decades? And it's not like they look across the border and say, wow, look what Israel did. Let's emulate that. No, they took all that money, and first of all, they spent, they have these lavish lifestyles for themselves, but then they spend it on building tunnels under hospitals and figuring out how to hold people hostage and torture them to death. They're not interested in the same things we're interested in. And it's really hard to convince people that there are people that are motivated that way, but it really seems to be true.
But think about just the mindset that can't tell the difference between murdering children and collateral damage, which involves children.
Yeah.
If you can't make that moral distinction, but the death of a child is always tragic. But the death of one child is morally reprehensible, and the death of another child is on the part of the aggressive force that inadvertently killed the child. That is morally excusable. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the death of the child itself. We're talking about the cause. And the cause is morally excusable because the cause did not intend to kill the child.
Right. That's right.
We mourn for the children. And it's horrible that the children are doing this. If Hamas would surrender, no more children would be killed. And this is what people don't understand. And I don't understand why they don't understand that. It's just obvious that if I push you off a cliff, then I've committed that's attempted murder on my part. I should go to jail, maybe even executed. If someone pushes me and I run into you and you fall off the cliff, I did cause you to fall off the cliff, but I am not responsible.
Yeah. Travis, I think people just cannot, will not, won't come to terms with that idea that there are truly evil people in the world who have evil intent pretty much all the time. There's so much cognitive dissonance in that for a lot of people. They just would have to change their whole view of humanity, and that it's too much to ask. It's too much. They would rather find reasons and excuses for why these people, these poor oppressed people, are doing what they're doing.
Right. But I also think that our culture has taught us. I mean, well, I'll back up a little bit, and I think I've said things like this before, but our culture has lost any sense of moral education into children.
Yeah.
When my son was 3 going on 4, he may have been 4 at this time, but this is in May or June after he had turned 4 years old. And the question that I had to wrestle with was, well, where is my son going to go to school? Am I going to keep him at the preschool that he's at now? Or am I going to enroll him in another program? And so I went to a school, and the teacher, the lady that runs the school, walked me around. She showed me all kinds of interesting things that the children were doing. At one point, she stopped the kid in the hall and she made him start rattling off his times tables. The kid got nervous, and I was like, golly, that's pretty harsh. But nevertheless, I walked around. I was pretty impressed with what the kids were doing. These are 3rd graders writing essays in Spanish, and I mean, I was impressed. And she took me outside and showed me like outside where they each have their own garden, and she just had all this stuff that she was doing with these children. I was like, golly, this is amazing. And she said, so what do you think? And I said, well, I have to admit, I'm really impressed. And she kind of beamed. I said, I have a question for you. She goes, yeah, well, what's your question? I said, what are you trying to produce here? She goes, I'm sorry, pardon me. And I said, well, what kind of character are you trying to mold here? What sort of values are you instilling in these children? And she got flustered. She didn't know how to answer. She goes, no one's ever asked me that question.
Wow.
And then she started giving me these pat answers like, well, we teach people. The first thing she said was, we're not a religious school. I said, I don't care about that. I'm just trying to get a sense of the values you're instilling in these children. She goes, well, we teach them to do as done to others. She gave these little pat golden rule type answers. And I looked at her and I nodded my head, sort of an understanding, and I said, I am impressed with your school, but I have to tell you, the answer you just gave me terrifies me.
Mm.
I later learned that there was a little boy in her school who, I guess they had their shoes off for some sort of activity. And the issue was he had to get his shoes on and he had to tie them in a certain time before he would be able to go outside for recess.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't get it. And then he was trying to tie the shoes. So this is not a kid who balked at the teacher and talked back and had to go into the corner and miss recess. I'm not talking about that. I wish we had more of that work. But this is a kid who was actually doing what she told him to do. But I mean, the poor little guy, he's probably 4 or 5, and his fingers just aren't there yet. He's not able to make the loops and do the tie. And he missed recess because he didn't get his shoes tied on time. And that's a woman whose values are so out of whack that she has absolutely no moral compass. There's a huge distinction between a kid who will not tie the shoe and the kid who cannot tie the shoe.
Right.
And any person of common sense and any person of any sense of value, moral values, knows the difference and can parse that out and say, well, obviously, since you're trying, let me help you tie the shoe. You've tried. Now go outside and have fun. I mean, as you know, one of the most important things a kid can do is be outside and have fun with his friends. That's far more important at the age of 5 than being able to get your times tables right or being able to parse a Spanish verb. And, when my kid was young, I said team sports is one of the most important things he's doing. It's far more important than academics because he's learning all kinds of things. Not only hand-eye coordination and all that stuff, but just the whole idea of respecting authority and teamwork and what it means to be on a team and have responsibilities.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is far more important than, can I put 2 and 2 together?
That's right.
So I love the fact that we flipped, my friend. You never know what to expect here on Notes On.
Technology is so amazing. Yeah.
Technology is great. But the mindset that we have is such that Bill Maher on his show noted this trend of kids that are attacking their teachers physically, and it's down to even middle school. So he showed one clip of a high school student getting mad at a teacher for taking his phone away from him, and when the teacher wouldn't do it, the kid sucker punched the teacher. And the teachers have these days no recourse. If they put their hands on these students or even punch to defend themselves, they're going to get fired or maybe even thrown in jail. So they're between a rock and a hard place on this. And so the inability of us to control these young people and while at the same time instilling in them values is becoming one of the greatest crises of our day.
It's getting to the point where morality does not compel behavior. The only thing that's going to compel behavior is simply the legality. It's not going to be about, is this the right thing to do? It's just going to be about, the law says I can do this and I can't do that, and I better follow the law just because I don't want to get in trouble with the law. And that's a sad place for a culture to be in, when there's no underlying morality behind behavior.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, just to get back to our main point, we got off on a tangent, but I mean, Ayan Hirshi, the fact that she's come full circle, the fact that she sees that on the one hand, you absolutely have to have a God to give a subjective meaning and a sense of duty and principle. And yet, on the other hand, you have to walk a balance between sheer tyranny, legalism, and the kind of anarchy that nihilistic atheism gives. And I agree with, I'm kind of William Lane Craig, who says all the time, I agree with Sartre and Nietzsche. I don't agree with the humanists. in the absence of God, there just is no reason to think that I have any duties to anyone or anything, and that I literally can do anything I please. What's to keep me from saying that and doing that and living that out, other than, as you just said, legal, sheer arbitrary power?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, if atheism is true, then literally every law that we submit ourselves to is arbitrary.
That's right. That's right. And if the law is changed, then it becomes somehow okay, because there's no underlying morality or ethic behind it.
That's right. So anyway, I don't know. I'm giddy about Ayan Hirshi Ali converting.
Yeah,
and I'm just excited. I can't wait to see. I have a feeling that we're going to see her move more from the broad cultural concerns that she had that made her attracted to the faith, to the scriptures themselves, and understanding that it's not just the cultural benefits you get from being a Christian. The most important thing is that Christianity just is true. And I would imagine she's there, but she's not articulating that yet. And she's so bright that it's going to be interesting to see her expressing those points from her perspective, that has such a rich life experience, and moving from Islam on the one hand. She's literally gone from the yin and the yang, and now she's found something that can give her both the freedom to live and follow her heart, if I can use that cheesy line, but on the other hand, there's form there to stabilize her as she's living out her life.
And I'm sure she's already discovering that there's, of course, a supernatural side to the faith, that there's change that comes from within. It's not just a matter of following, the Bible has the best rules that have ever been written, but they're not good enough in and of themselves without the Holy Spirit moving in us and changing us from within. They're just words. They're just another set of guidelines, but they become the best when we allow him to change our heart. That's what makes the faith so humbling and amazing for me. One of the many things.
Well, speaking of the best, dude, you're the best.
Well, next time we'll get back to the Mariology list. I've been studying a lot more about that. I think
remind me to send you a video that we can talk about a little bit on it. So
okay.
So, but hey, man, I wish you the best. See you next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yeah, and
God bless.
Keep praying for people that you want to see come to the Lord. Thanks, Travis.
I mean, now that we've seen Ayan Hirshi Ali, I mean, Sam Harris just might be around the corner.
Oh, absolutely. And then Dawkins.
How great would that be? And then Dawkins. Imagine.
All right, brother.
Take care.
See ya.